Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host Dr. Gill, and today we're tackling a critical topic: the recent Israeli military strikes on Iran and what they mean for the region, including Pakistan's role. This is a complex situation with high stakes, and we're here to break it down factually, fairly, and without taking sides. Let's dive into what happened, why, and where things might go next. Stay with me. On June 12, 2025, Israel launched a large-scale military operation against Iran, targeting nuclear facilities, missile production sites, and military infrastructure. Over 200 warplanes hit more than 100 targets, including in Tehran, in what Israel called Operation Rising Lion. This was the second major Israeli strike on Iran in 2024, following an October attack on air defense systems. Israel says these strikes are to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, which it views as a potential threat. But this pattern of repeated strikes has raised questions about escalation and who's driving this conflict. Let's unpack the sequence of events. The Israel-Iran tensions have deep roots, but let's focus on recent events. In April 2024, Israel bombed Iran's embassy in Damascus, killing 2 Iranian generals and others. Iran retaliated on April 13th with over 300 drones and missiles aimed at Israel, most of which were intercepted with US, UK, and Jordanian help, causing minimal damage. Then, on October 1st, Iran launched 180 ballistic missiles at Israel after the assassinations of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh, Hezbollah's Hassan Nasrallah, and an IRGC commander, which Iran blamed on Israel. Israel responded with strikes on October 26th, targeting Iran's air defenses. The June 2025 strikes, however, were much larger, hitting nuclear sites and killing key figures like IRGC commander Hossein Salami and nuclear scientists Feridun Abbasi and Mohammad Mehdi Taranchi. The human toll is significant but unclear due to Iran's media restrictions. Iranian reports say civilian areas in Tehran were hit, with children among the casualties, though exact numbers are unverified. Israel insists it targeted only military and nuclear sites to neutralize a future threat. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei called the strikes a violation of sovereignty and promised a response. Hours later, Iran launched about 100 drones toward Israel, signaling a first-wave retaliation, though damage reports are still vague. The cycle of strikes and counterstrikes shows Israel initiating direct attacks twice in 2024 and once in 2025, with Iran responding each time, raising concerns about who's pushing the region toward war. Israeli F-15I Ra'am strike fighters, F-16I Sufa, multi-role fighters, and F-35I Adir stealth fighters were involved in the strikes that took place at several locations across Iranian territory. The Israeli fighters utilized a number of different munitions, including 500 1000 lb Joint Direct Attack Munitions, JDAM, and GBU-39B small diameter bombs, SDB. Israeli-made air-launched ballistic missile Rampage and cruise missile systems Wind Demon and Icebreaker appear to be the weapons of choice in these devastating onslaught by the IAF or Iran nuclear facilities, early warning radars, and air defenses. Furthermore, a bigger devastation for nuclear program of Iran is targeting of its nuclear scientists. Mohammad Mehdi Tehrani, Ahmad Reza Zolfagari, and Feridun Abbasi among 6 nuclear scientists killed in this attack. Early reports indicate over 800 Iranian projectiles, including cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and suicide drones, have been launched toward Israel. This is likely the largest coordinated strike Iran has ever launched. Air defense systems across the region are fully active. Reports say Iranian hackers have launched a cyber attack against Israel, targeting its alert systems. This could prevent Israeli citizens from receiving warning messages in the event of an incoming Iranian attack. Now, let's talk about Pakistan's role, as it's a key player in this regional dynamic. Pakistan shares a border with Iran and has historically maintained friendly ties, despite tensions like the January 2024 tit-for-tat strikes over Baloch insurgencies. Pakistan condemned Israel's June 2025 strikes, calling them a threat to regional stability and urging de-escalation. Political analysts note Pakistan's delicate position. It wants to avoid being drawn into the conflict but faces pressure from its growing ties with the US. Since 2024, US-Pakistan relations have warmed with increased military and economic cooperation. Some analysts suggest the US may want Pakistan to stay neutral or even provide logistical support, like access to bases, if the conflict escalates. For Pakistan, staying a silent spectator could indirectly support Israel by not challenging its actions, but it risks straining ties with Iran, a neighbor with shared cultural and economic interests. Let's look at the motivations. Israel says its strikes are preemptive, aimed at stopping Iran from becoming a nuclear power. It points to Iran's uranium enrichment, criticized by the International Atomic Energy Agency, as evidence of a threat. Iran, however, sees itself as defending its sovereignty. It argues that Israel's repeated attacks on its embassy, leaders, and now nuclear sites are unprovoked escalations. Iran's economy is under strain from sanctions, and public sentiment, according to regional reports, leans against war. Yet, Iran feels compelled to respond to show strength, as seen in its drone attacks. The pattern of Israel striking first, followed by Iran's retaliation, suggests a cycle where Israel's actions are setting the pace, pulling the region closer to broader conflict. Why does this matter regionally? Pakistan, for instance, faces a dilemma. Supporting Iran could alienate the US, a key economic partner, while staying neutral might frustrate Iran and domestic audiences who see Israel's actions as aggressive. The US has denied direct involvement in Israel's strikes, but has bolstered its military presence in the region, deploying F-22s and naval forces. This signals US support for Israel, which complicates Pakistan's balancing act. Meanwhile, the Gaza conflict and Hezbollah's clashes with Israel, both tied to Iran's axis of resistance, add fuel to the fire. Jordan and Iraq, caught in the crossfire, have seen missiles pass through their airspace, raising fears of a wider war. So what's the reality here? Israel's repeated strikes, 3 major operations in 2024 and 2025, are based on its belief that Iran could pose a future threat, particularly with its nuclear program. But this approach risks dragging the region into war, as each strike prompts an Iranian response. Iran, despite its economic challenges and domestic reluctance for conflict, feels forced to retaliate to maintain credibility. Pakistan, as a neighbor, wants stability, but is pressured by its US ties to stay on the sidelines, which some see as indirectly favoring Israel's position. The cycle of preemptive strikes and retaliations is escalating tensions with no clear off-ramp. What's next? Iran has called for international mediation, while Israel shows no signs of backing down, citing its security concerns. The UN and G7 have urged restraint, but diplomacy is struggling. Pakistan's neutral stance may help avoid escalation, but it's a tough balancing act. Iran's limited responses so far suggest it wants to avoid all-out war, but the pressure is mounting. The region needs a way to break this cycle before it spirals further. That's the breakdown of this tense Israel-Iran conflict and Pakistan's tricky position. We've laid out the facts to show how Israel's repeated strikes are driving this cycle, with Iran responding under pressure and Pakistan navigating a complex regional role. What do you think? How can Iran protect itself from further escalation when Israel continues its operations? What options does Iran have to avoid war while defending its sovereignty? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this helped you understand the situation, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more balanced updates. Stay informed and see you next time.